Hello and welcome back. So we are in our second video in our video series for chapter 1, Molecules of Life. So let's dive right into 1.2, Carbohydrates. So here are the learning outcomes for this subtopic. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to state the classes of carbohydrates such as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. You should also be able to illustrate the formation and breakdown of maltose. And last but not least, you should be able to compare the structures and the functions of starch, glycogen, and cellulose. So let's talk about, first things first, the classes of carbohydrates. So you know roughly what carbohydrates are. Like, you know bread has carbohydrates, you know noodles, you know rice has carbohydrates. And those are correct examples. Carbs are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they can be found in wide varieties of our food. One of the importances of carbohydrates is it is our main source of energy. It's the main source of energy for a lot of living things. And there are three classes of carbohydrates. Okay, don't think of it as bread and noodles and rice. Think of it as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Okay, ada tiga kelas carbohydrate. So the first class will include simple sugars or monomers such as glucose, fructose, galactose. Disaccharides are for double sugars or dimers such as sucrose, maltose, and lactose. And last but not least, polysaccharides are for complex sugars or polymers such as starch, glycogen, and cellulose. We can also classify carbs in other ways. So you don't just look at if it is satu biji or dua biji or banyak biji, okay? You can also look at it as how many carbon atoms it has. So if the molecule has 3 carbon atoms, we can call it a triose. If it has 5 carbon atoms, we can call it a pentose. And if it has 6 carbon atoms, we can call it a hexose. So here we have examples of triose sugars, pentose sugars, and hexose sugars. You can count the number of carbons there. You can also classify them based on the location of the carbonyl group. So you can classify them into ketose or aldose, depending on where the C double bond O group is. Okay, carbonyl is C double bond O. So if it is a ketose, the C double bond O or carbonyl group is in the middle of the chain. If it is an aldose, then the carbonyl group will be at the ends or the terminals of the chain. So ini dia di hujung, 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 hujung. Ini dia punya carbonyl di tengah, tengah, tengah. Okay. We usually like to classify based on whether or not they are monosaccharides, disaccharides, or polysaccharides. Ini adalah jenis classification yang kita lebih gemar gunakan. So let's look at monosaccharide. The empirical formula is CH2O. And then the N is how many carbon atoms are in that molecule. So monosaccharides are the simplest carbohydrates. They are simple sugars. Inilah bentuk gula carbohydrate yang paling ringkas. So they can exist in a linear form, macam begini, dia lurus saja, terbuka, or they can exist in a ring form. Kadang dia tidak lurus, dia boleh terlipat. Bila dia lipat, dia akan membentuk ring ataupun bentuk cincin. So both of these are correct, and both of these can happen in nature. They cannot be hydrolyzed into simpler sugars. Inilah bentuk gula ataupun carbohydrate yang paling ringkas. Kalau ringkaskan lagi, dia bukan carbohydrate sudah. Examples of these are glucose, fructose, and galactose. And characteristics of monosaccharides is that they are colorless. They are water-soluble. They are crystalline solids. They have a sweet taste. And they are reducing sugar. Semua ini kamu boleh bayangkan gula. You can think of the glucose, the gula yang bantuan rakyat, you know, the care package they send to your house during PKP. You look at the gula inside the package. You look at how the sugar, when you dissolve it in water, it is colorless. It is water-soluble. It is crystalline. Dibentuk macam crystal means dia segi empat. That's a crystalline shape. And it has a sweet taste. Reducing sugar doesn't mean reduce the lemak in your body. No, reducing sugar refers to chemical interactions. Okay, so you remember in chemistry you have oxidation reduction. Reducing sugar merujuk kepada oxidation reduction reaction itu, redox reaction. Okay, so if you don't understand that now, that's fine. Just memorize the characteristics of these sugars. Oh, sorry, my head was covering it. So yeah, so you can memorize these characteristics of monosaccharides. Okay, so glucose is the most common monosaccharides that we use, and it is what our bodies and our cells like to use as well. I would like you to know that there are two types of glucose molecules. Okay, ada dua jenis glucose molecule. Bilangan karbon, bilangan hydrogen, bilangan oksigen dia adalah sama. It contains the same number of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. But the arrangement is different. Susunan dia berbeza. So these two types are alpha glucose and beta glucose. Alpha glucose, the OH group of the first carbon will project below the plane of the ring. So kalau dia adalah bentuk ring macam ini, alpha glucose dia punya OH adalah di sebelah bawah. If you are looking at the position of OH group, okay, kalau kita mau tengok berdasarkan OH group, kita boleh cakap A means above, B means below, or A atas, B bawah. Okay, hold on. Okay. Say for example, we're looking at this alpha glucose. We start with oxygen. Okay, that's the oxygen atom. And then here, over here, okay, yeah, over here, that is your first carbon atom. That is your second carbon atom, third carbon atom, fourth carbon atom, fifth carbon atom, and sixth carbon atom. If you look at it from here, kalau kamu tengok dari yang linear punya gambar, kalau linear punya gambar, ini adalah first carbon, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Bila dalam ring, dia akan lipat. So, remember, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So, if we are looking at the position of the OH group, we start with carbon number 1. OH adalah BBAB. Bawah, bawah, atas, bawah. Then carbon number 4. Then that means this is alpha glucose. If it is beta glucose, again, same linear structure, same carbon, same hydrogen, same oxygen amount, but arrangement is different. So let's look at the arrangement for beta glucose. Kalau beta glucose from the first carbon, look at here. From the first carbon, there we go. At the first carbon, OH is on top, second carbon, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So let's look here. Carbon 1, atas, bawah, atas, bawah, atas, bawah. Carbon 1, A, B, A, B. Carbon 4. Okay, so that's how you see the difference between alpha glucose and beta glucose. Why does this matter? This will matter because different types of glucose arrangement will give rise to different bonds. Different bonds means that the property of the polysaccharide will be different. Mari kita tengok, okay, di bawah. Okay, so this is how you draw a alpha glucose. Okay, I'll replay that animation again. If you want, please take out a piece of paper and draw this part with me. Kalau kamu mau lukis kamu punya alpha glucose, kita start dengan oxygen, lepas tu kita lukis rangka dia. You draw the hexagon shape, and then add the palang-palang. Add carbon 4, okay, di sebelah sini. Di palang ini, kamu tambah CH2OH, bawah dia tambah H. Okay? Once you've got to this step, you can move on to the next step, which is we add the OH. This is alpha glucose. So kita start dengan bawah, bawah, atas, bawah. So OH, 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 OH. Then we just fill in the leftover hydrogen atoms. Isi H, 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 H. And that's it. This is your alpha glucose molecule. Next, we shall do the beta glucose. So the beta glucose, you start with the oxygen, then you do the rangka again. Okay? And then you do the palang and you do the CH2OH and add the H. Then do the rest of the palang, do the OH on top, OH bawah, OH atas, OH bawah, then H, 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 H. If you want, you can replay this video in slow motion and try to follow how I drew this beta glucose. Okay? Practice, ringkas saja, tidak payah kemas sangat kamu punya lukisan, tapi pastikan dia agak, it follows the guidelines lah. Example of things you shouldn't do with these diagrams is, bila kamu lukis ini oksigen, lukis itu glukos, itu garis jangan bersentuh dengan oksigen. Don't let the lines touch the oxygen. Dia macam ngam-ngam berhenti sebelum. Alright, and when you draw the palang, if it is OH, itu garis berhenti ngam-ngam di atas O, tapi tidak bersentuh. Kalau dia H saja, dia berhenti sebelum H. Kalau boleh di tengah-tengah H itu. Kalau macam ini, CH2OH, garis palang itu akan bersambung, tidak bersambung lah, selari dengan C, tapi tidak bersentuhan. So you can see the way I draw, the lines will not touch the atom. But they will be in line. Okay, it will be in the middle of the letter for the atoms. Okay, so practice this. We'll talk about the importance of monosaccharides. What makes them so useful? Well, monosaccharides are the building blocks of disaccharides and polysaccharides. That is the first importance. Okay, disaccharide dan polysaccharide terdiri daripada monosaccharide. Monosaccharides are also important because they are the main source of energy for cellular respiration. So when your cells in your body, when they need energy, they are going to use glucose for cellular respiration and produce ATP. Monosaccharides are also important because they function as the raw material for the synthesis of other monomers, including those of amino acids and fatty acids. So, dia akan membantu dalam penghasilan monomer lain seperti amino acid dan fatty acid. So, those are the three importance of monosaccharides. Next, we shall move on to the second class of carbohydrates, which is disaccharides. So when you have two monosaccharide, you join them by a glycosidic linkage, which is a type of covalent bond. You will form a disaccharide through the process of condensation. Dalam arti kata lain, disaccharide adalah dua monosaccharide yang disambung melalui kondensasi. Glycosidic linkage can be broken by adding water to the bond via hydrolysis, thus breaking a disaccharide down to its respective monomers. Kalau kita mau kasih pecah, kita tambah air dan proses pemecahan itu adalah digelar sebagai hydrolysis. Okay, what are the characteristics of disaccharides? Disaccharides are water soluble, they have a sweet taste, and they can be crystallized. Examples of disaccharides are maltose, which is glucose and glucose, lactose, which is glucose and galactose, and sucrose, which is glucose and fructose. And there are examples for each of these types of sugars up here. Okay, I'm going to move my head down. Okay. So one thing I would like to point out, maltose is malt sugar, lactose is susu, and sucrose is another type of table sugar, and it is also the major transport form of sugar in plants. So, kamu tahu tumbuhan itu ada xylem dan phloem. Dalam phloem tumbuhan itu, kebanyakan gula dalam phloem tumbuhan, dalam batang dia, adalah dalam bentuk sucrose. That is what is meant here. Transport form of sugar in plants. Okay, let us move on to the next slide. So this is slides showing the formation of maltose and the breakdown of maltose. Mari kita tengok. Ini formation of maltose, glucose dengan glucose. Salah satu daripada dia akan derma OH. Yang kedua akan derma H. Dan keluarkan water. Condensation. So it will form this maltose. Yang tengah-tengah ini yang nampak macam dia berpegang tangan ini adalah alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. For breakdown of maltose, it's the opposite. Okay, dia ada maltose di tengah-tengah, ada alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. Kita tulis dia plus H2O. Tulis anak panah hydrolysis. And then it will become glucose and glucose. Jangan lupa tambah dia punya OH dengan H. So let us see this. This one is formation of lactose. Sekejap saya kasih betul dulu ni slide. Okay, never mind. I think you can still follow the slide even with the perkataan terapung. Okay, so let us try to draw the formation of lactose. If I want to draw the formation of lactose, first I draw this beta-galactose. Okay, saya lukis dulu ini galactose di sebelah tepi. Saya lukis tambah. Then saya lukis glucose molecule. So this one is a beta-glucose. And then I will use a dotted line to show that I take OH and H. Di sebelah sini saya lukis garisan putus-putus untuk ambil OH. Di sebelah saya akan lukis garisan putus-putus tapi saya ambil dia punya H sahaja. Lepas tu saya lukis anak panah. Anak panah ke atas menunjukkan kita buang H2O, buang air. And then I will draw this first half of lactose. Okay, saya lukis macam ni. Di bawah OH, sini ada satu palang pendek dengan H. Atas tu kasih kosong dulu. And then I draw the next part which is the half of the glucose. Ini pun palang pendek, bawah dia kasih kosong. And then I will draw the beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. Ini cara saya lukis beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. Lurus, O, lurus. And then, of course, I label the bonds. Okay, so that is how it looks like for formation of lactose. We are looking at the same thing for formation of sucrose. Okay, saya lukis begini. Lukis begini. Lukis garisan putus-putus. Lukis anak panah, tunjukkan kita keluarkan water. And draw like this, draw like this. I leave the empty space. And then I join. This one is alpha 1,2 glycosidic bond. Biasa kalau ada soalan macam ini, dia akan tunjukkan kamu molekul glucose dengan molekul fructose. Lepas tu dia akan suruh kamu lukis formation. They will provide you this first part. You just have to figure out how to draw this and draw this. Okay, so that is for disaccharides. Let us move on to the third class, which is polysaccharides. So polysaccharides are polymers of hundreds to thousands of monosaccharides joined by glycosidic linkage. Asalkan dia lebih daripada 2 biji, kita boleh kira dia sebagai polysaccharide sudah. Dan biasanya polysaccharide ini sangat panjang. The chains formed may be variable in length. Okay, they can be very long. Some of them can be kind of short. They can be branched or unbranched. Dia boleh lurus ataupun dia boleh bercabang. They can be folded. Okay, dia boleh terlipat, which is ideal for energy storage. Okay, sebab kalau kita boleh lipatkan polysaccharide tu, kita boleh muatkan dia dalam sel yang kecil. And polysaccharides can be straight or coiled. So kamu tengok di sini, coiled means dia bergulung. Okay, so this one is amylose and amylopectin are coiled. For cellulose, it is straight. So let's look at the characteristics of polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are tasteless. They are insoluble in water and they cannot be crystallized. So kamu bayangkan nasi. Nasi hampir tiada rasa, tasteless. Nasi tidak larut dalam air. Dan nasi tidak berbentuk kristal. Okay, it is not of sharp edges. Sudah tentunya not the whole nasi is polysaccharide lah. Dia terdiri daripada benda lain lagi. Tapi ini adalah cara untuk kita ingat dengan mudah. Okay, kalau mau ingat dengan mudah, ingat nasi. Okay, so examples of polysaccharides are starch, glycogen, and cellulose. Let us look at each of these examples. The first example is starch. Starch is a polysaccharide that is formed from alpha glucose units. It is the major storage form of carbohydrate in plants. Starch is insoluble in water, so it can be stored in large amounts with little effect on the water potential. And it is made up of two components, which are amylose and amylopectin. Okay, so the alpha glucose, major storage form, insoluble in water, tidak larut dalam air, dan dia tidak akan affect water potential. Next chapter, when we look at water potential, you can ask more about that later. Okay, so this is amylose dan amylopectin. Both are starch. The differences between amylose and amylopectin can be found here. Syllabus lama banyak tekankan perbandingan antara amylose dengan amylopectin. Tapi syllabus baru tidak berapa menitik beratkan perbezaannya. So although this is out of the syllabus, still read through. Tiada dalam syllabus pun kita cuba baca saja. Mana tahu keluar dalam exam nanti. Okay, so just read. If you cannot memorize, that's fine. But try to read and try to remember some key points like linear, unbranched, branch, hydrogen bond, alpha 1 po. Itu. Okay. Alpha glucose. Ingat sikit-sikit. Okay lah tu, daripada tiada. Alright. So that was the first example of polysaccharide. The second example of polysaccharide is glycogen. Glycogen is a major storage form of carbohydrate in animals. They are mostly found in our liver and in our muscle tissue where we have high metabolic activities. They are insoluble in water, so no effect on water potential. Tidak larut dalam air. It is made up of short branch chains of alpha glucose units, and they are more extensively branched than amylopectin. So, kamu tengok ni, dia bercabang-cabang. Banyak cabangan dia. That is what is meant by those 2 points. Its linear chains are held together by alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond, meaning kalau dia chain yang lurus ini, okay, down here, this is held together by alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond yang saya tulis dalam tulisan purple gelap. Okay, in dark purple, that is the alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond. While the branches, the cabangan, is held together by alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond. So, kamu tengok di sini, alpha 1,6 glycosidic bond. Nampak macam susah, tapi actually dia senang saja. Kalau dia dengan yang orang di sebelah, dia adalah Kalau dia dengan orang di sebelah, dia adalah 1,4. Kalau dia dengan orang yang di atas atau di bawah, dia adalah 1,6. Okay, let's see how this applies to the next one, okay? We are going into the third. Oh, hold on, where is my head? Oh, no, that's not my head. Here's my head. Okay, I'm here. Okay, so let us look at the third example of polysaccharides, which is cellulose. So cellulose is a very important structural material in plants. You can find it in the plant cell wall. They are made up of long chains of beta-glucose units, which are held together by beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. And they are unbranched. So, kamu tengok di sini, dia adalah lurus saja dan molekul beta-glucose pertama dengan beta-glucose kedua adalah beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. Satu benda yang kamu boleh perasan, kalau cellulose, Memandangkan dia menggunakan beta 1,4-glycosidic bond, dia punya tangan ini macam satu naik, satu turun. So if you look at these like people holding hands, this one are raising the hands, this one is lowering the hands. This one is raising. So dia akan nampak selang-seli. Satu angkat tangan, satu turun, angkat, turun, angkat, turun. Macam tu. Now these will form very long linear chains. These long parallel strands of cellulose will be linked by hydrogen bond, making the cell wall a very stable structure. So kalau ini adalah satu barisan yang lurus, as you can see here, a long chain. Between chain number 1 and chain number 2 is hydrogen bond. Chain number 2 and chain number 3, hydrogen bond. Setiap kali ada itu OH dengan OH di bawah, dia akan form hydrogen bond. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And this is a very quick comparison between starch, glycogen, and cellulose. Kalau kamu mau banding bezakan antara glycogen, starch dengan cellulose, boleh gunakan table ini. Alright, so we learned about the different classes of polysaccharides, the different examples of polysaccharides, and now we look at their importance. Kenapa polysaccharide itu penting? Peranan polysaccharide adalah sebagai sumber tenaga, is an energy storage macromolecule that is hydrolyzed when needed. So we store polysaccharides in our tissue. Kita simpan dalam bentuk polysaccharide, dan bila perlu, kita akan hydrolyze, kita akan potong bahagian yang kita mau. Bahagian yang dipotong itu boleh digunakan untuk menjana tenaga. Okay? So in plants will store their energy in the form of starch. In us and other animals, we will store our energy in the form of glycogen. Second role of polysaccharides in living organism, peranan kedua polysaccharide dalam living organism, it serves as building materials for a cell or a whole organism. Okay, so most importantly in plant cell walls, it is cellulose, that is the polysaccharides. Fungi uses a different building material. Okay, kamu bayangkan mushroom tu, kulat-kulat cendawan. They also use a polysaccharide for their cell wall, but it is not cellulose. So have a look and see which polysaccharide that is. Okay, so this is a quick review. This is a quick review of a quick summary of the things we already talked about. So you can use this table or copy this table to help you revise. Okay, itu sajalah. Itu conclusion kita untuk carbohydrates. By the end of this lesson, I hope you are able to state the classes of carbohydrates. I hope you're able to illustrate the formation and breakdown of maltose, and I hope you're able to compare the structures and the functions of starch, glycogen, and cellulose. What should you do now? Now you should take out a piece of paper and draw the following molecules and label the important bonds. So lukislah alpha glucose dan beta glucose. Nomor 1 ini tiada bond. Draw maltose. Okay, lukis disaccharide maltose. Maltose ada bond yang kamu perlu label. Third, draw glycogen. Lukis glycogen 5 basic units. So 5 biji, 1, 2, 3 di bawah, 1 di atas, 1 di atas. And then label the bonds. Number 4, draw cellulose. I want you to draw 6 basic units, 3 on each row. So untuk cellulose tu saya mau kamu lukis 1, 2, 3 di atas, 1, 2, 3 di bawah. For cellulose, remember to label the beta 1,4-glycosidic bond and the hydrogen bond. Draw, and please upload your answers in the Google Classroom. That is all for this carbohydrates lesson. Thank you very much. I'll see you again.